Welcome to this episode of The Mat Return. I'm AJ Piazza.
I'm Andrew Deal.
And I'm Evan Smith.
And today we're going to recap both BJC duels against Iowa and Michigan and back at the Rec Hall with Maryland and preview the two matches for this weekend up against Ohio State and Illinois. Andrew, what did you see in the Iowa duel?
Obviously, Tyler Kasak was the headline of that duel, but we're going to get into him a little bit later. And I'm going to really focus on the match out of the break in Mitchell Messenbrink at 165. He, in my opinion, fully solidified himself as the top guy at 165, and there's a big drop-off to number 2, who is Mikey Caliendo from Iowa. And it's just pure dominance from Messenbrink all year. He had a 19-4 tech fall at the 6:24 mark against Caliendo, and he just looked so much better, so much faster. He was really aggressive and just overpowered Caliendo. And if that's the number 2 guy, if that's the guy that's supposed to be the biggest competitor to Messenbrink, then there is a massive gap in the next wrestler compared to Messenbrink.
Yeah, I think Messenbrink has to be seen as a Hans Trophy favorite because if you just look at the difference between Messenbrink and his entire weight class, Gable Stevenson is like the other name getting mentioned along with Carter. They all have a 2 or a 2 and 3 that are comparable. There's no one in 165 even close to Messenbrink, and I don't think there's going to be for these next couple of years that he's around.
Right.
The match that I do want to shout out was Shane Van Ness down at 149, taking down Kyle Parko. Real impressive. He didn't let a reversal get to his head, and then in the third period kept that lead. And there's a lot of chaos down at 149. It's the exact opposite of 165. It's like a parity circle between the top 3.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how those 3 shake out in the national look and the rankings. And then when we hit the national championship, I think it's going to be between 149 and at 149 is like the top most entertaining weight class. I forget the other one. 187. Those 2 are going to be the most fun weight classes to look at.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with Greg Kirkfleet against Ben Cuter. I think Kirkfleet's really just solidifying himself as that number 2 guy. I don't know if you can say he's the number 1 guy right now just because he hasn't obviously wrestled Stevenson, but he really dominated Cuter, winning 11-1. He was in control the entire match, and it's just been a theme that he's done so far in all the matches he's really been in this season. So yeah, I'd go with that. And then in the other BJC duel, Penn State defeated Michigan. What was the match that stood out to you, Andrew? We'll start with you first.
I am going to go up to Carter Starachi at 184. He wrestled number 24, Jaden Bullock, so it's not a big, they're not too close in the rankings, but it was good to see Starachi, fully dominate and tech fall Bullock right at the 7-minute mark. It was kind of cool to see that. He wrestled all the way through, and his riding time point, which he had 3.5 minutes of riding time, which I think is insane.
Yeah.
And 19-4 tech fall. He also picked up 3 stall points, so that might have had a factor in it as well during this match. But tech falling a ranked guy is a good sign for Starachi as he looks for his historic championship.
And I'm also going to go back up to 285 because I think this win by Kirkfleet might have been more impressive in the fact that Heinzelman is the top 10 wrestler. Kirkfleet was throwing him around like he weighed less than him when Heinzelman was noticeably bigger looking. It's just a real impressive showing by Kirkfleet, being able to lift him up a few times. You look at these heavyweight bouts, you think it's going to be a lot of hand fighting. Kirkfleet made sure this wasn't quite that situation.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mitchell Messenbrink. This was the only match against Montona that Messenbrink didn't get a tech fall. He's had a tech fall in all of his other matches, and you could argue there might have been some stalling throughout, but still, it was the first time that we've all seen Messenbrink through 3 periods this season, and he just looks like he's the best in that class. And I agree with you what you said before. If Caliendo is the number 2, then there's a large gap between the number 1 and 2 in these 2 weight classes.
Well, it's good to see, 'cause we talked to him in media yesterday after the Maryland duel, that he actually really enjoyed that match. He obviously tech following is going to be fun, but he said if he is just going out there to tech fall, then there's really no point in him wrestling. Where he kind of used this match against Montanona, I think is how you pronounce it, to really learn some different positions and learn how to fight off some things that he might not see in other wrestlers because he is dominating them and tech following them so quickly.
Yeah, this was a rarity that we can say that has happened this season where you get to see those different positions and you can see how he improved in each one from last season.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see. Just another wrestler I wanted to shout out was Kyson Garcia, his first dual meet match. He came up with a win. It was impressive, obviously not against a ranked opponent in Whartonin, but still good to see a guy slot in for Braden Davis who we don't know when he'll be back. And
right.
Just seeing a potential sub getting a victory is nice to see in the 133 for the Nittany Lions. And then we will go on to back at Rec Hall against Maryland, Penn State, with a closer victory than I think most would expect. Andrew, what stood out to you in this one?
I'm going to go with we've mentioned him already twice, but I feel like we got to keep doing it because he's continuously winning. Greg Kirkfleet at heavyweight won 8-3 over Seth Nevels, who was at Penn State, so there's obviously some familiarity. Only 8-3, still was in control the entire match, and I kind of am starting to feel bad for Kirkfleet because when you're sitting there watching it, you look around in the crowd and people are starting to get up and leave, like almost as we know he's going to win, let's get out of here and avoid the traffic because there's a lot of people at these duels, and he continuously wins, and another big win against Nevels is just going to continue to solidify his case to be right up there with Gable Stevenson.
Yeah. Evan?
I'm going to move down to 184. Carter Strachey just looked incredible against number 11 in Jackson Smith. 6-0 with 1:21 in riding time after the first, and just never let up. A lot of the times Penn State dealt with stalling that didn't let them secure a tech fall. Carter just kept letting Jackson get up, took him right down, and he tried to go for a pin, wasn't quite able to get it, and then after the last time they rolled out of bounds, Carter just said, okay, took him down one last time. Got the tech fall there. It's just an impressive performance all around.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Shane Van Ness, or the Van Ness Monster, as the crowd was chanting yesterday. Looked like he was going to get the pinfall a few times, but was never really able to get that second shoulder down.
I thought he had it a couple times.
I also thought he had it, but then, Evan told me that he never got the second shoulder down. So,
well, yeah, that's why they didn't dart.
Well, he kept turning.
It was weird.
He kept switching sides trying to get that shoulder down, and maybe he had it down at one point and the ref didn't see it, but still gets the big win.
Yeah, no, it was just an impressive win because he was completely in control, and I honestly did think he got the pinfall, but it just never, obviously wasn't able to get both shoulders down. But still an impressive match from him, and just this lineup in general, which we can really say has been so far this season. They've just been completely dominating from the whole lineup. But now there are three specific wrestlers I think we each need to talk about from this weekend or this past weekend and the Iowa match. Evan, we'll start with you. Who do you want to really focus on right now?
Josh Barr had a 2-week period, I guess,
2
where
weeks.
he went through all of the emotions you can probably imagine, I think, because he had a chance to face number 1 and number 2 in his weight class. And from where Barr stood, I was saying it all for the last couple of weeks, he's that number 4 wrestler that he was just outside that top 3, and this was his chance to break into it. Goes into Iowa, and he loses because he didn't look like Josh Barr. He looked really timid, and then it cost him when he got to that third period. Got that the one takedown. It was too late for him to do anything to catch up to that on top of the riding time. Wasn't able to escape in that third. But after that match, he goes backstage, and I accidentally walked in on him talking with Aaron Brooks and Bo Nickel, and those two are notorious for not having those kind of timid matches. So I think that might have been the course of the discussion they were having before Barr went back into the locker room. And he listened to it because next week we went out against Jacob Cardenas, sorry, in Michigan. And he looked like himself. He came out hot. It took him until extra time, but my God, that was one of the greatest moments that I can remember watching. It's so unique in that all of the crowd kind of started sitting down. And I think everybody kind of thought 6 seconds left, it's basically over. And then that sock turn, the bit of a delayed reaction, people finally realized what just happened, My voice cracked so loudly. um, it was just like an insane moment, and especially with the way that it launched Barr into that top 3. That top 4 discussion now at 197 is going to be really fun for the rest of the season since he was able to get that upset victory.
Yeah, absolutely. And, during the preseason and some of the weaker spots in the lineup, we thought that 197 might have been one of those spots. And
Yeah.
you could argue it's been one of the strongest. I mean, Barr's he's had some real tough matchups so far in that weight class, and it seems like he's up against a ranked opponent every single week, and he's doing his job. And it's really impressive to see, and you can tell that loss, I think it did something for him.
Mm-hmm.
His mentality and the match that he had against Michigan was very different than Iowa. It was like two different Josh Barrs, so it was impressive to see that. And then Andrew, over to you. Who do you want to shout out?
Yeah, I mentioned it at the beginning, and we're going to go to Tyler Kasak at 157. It's been a tough 2 weeks for Tyler Kasak.
Yeah.
He got the win against Iowa, got really cut up, though. In fact, Cale Sanderson, in one of the medias, said he flipped his hair up and saw his eyebrow dangling over his eye.
Yeah.
Not really a fun thing to picture. So he obviously needed stitches. He's still dealing with that because he's still wearing that head that his head wrapped.
It looks like a headband, but it's like a wrap.
Yeah, I don't know if I think it might be like, yeah.
I'd say it's more of a wrap that they're putting on. I doubt
but
it's
it is
like a headband.
a headband.
Yeah.
In a sense, to be able to protect that wound. He took another shot to the head against Michigan, slow to get up. He's also been poked in the eye a lot. And then against Maryland, against Ethan Miller, who's one of the top wrestlers in the weight class, undefeated as well, got poked in the eye probably about 10 times, if I counted correctly. One of the times he shot back and went down, and he had to go off into concussion protocol. And despite him being dominant and gaining that number 1 spot after he beat Ja'Cory Teamer, it's now up in the air when we're going to see Kasak again. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not until the Big Ten Championships. In my opinion, you give him the rest. He has shown he's one of the top wrestlers in the country. He has the number 1 spot right now. Let him recover fully from this head injury, this head wound, concussion, whatever it fully is. And you have a guy behind him in Alex Facundo who is also really good. Another spot where we were questioning who's going to be the starter. Is this a hole in the lineup? Turns out Kasak won the job and has been one of the top wrestlers in that weight class. And when you bring in Facundo, there's not really going to be that hole in the lineup still with him. He's still probably one of the top wrestlers in the country.
Yeah.
So with him being the backup, I say you give Kasak that time off these next 2 weeks that will end up turning into about 4 weeks until the Big Ten Championships.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially you see a lot of his opponents going at his head and trying to hit it or touch it in some way or aspect.
Yeah.
And every time they do, it seems like he's going down and there's going to be a pause at some point during his match. So I completely agree. Facundo is a very good wrestler at 157, but it doesn't always get looked at like that because he is the backup to Kasak. But Facundo, I agree with you, there wouldn't really be much of a hole there.
Yeah.
And they should let him rest until at least like the Big Tens.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to wrestle. The lineup's very deep, so as a team in a dual meet, it should be fine.
Yeah.
Just wanted to get your guys' opinions on this past match against Ethan Miller. The crowd was not a fan of when they announced Miller as the winner by injury, and he started hyping up like the crowd to boo him more. What were your thoughts on that? Were they booing him or booing both or the result?
I feel like it might have been a bit of just unhappiness with the situation at hand as a whole, because Tyler Kasak last week became one of the most popular wrestlers in this lineup with that moment lifting up Ja'Cory Teamer. And now, watching him walk off injured. When Ethan Miller, he was targeting it. There's no other way around it. You can say it's wrong, but it's what's going to happen when you're wrestling. If you find a weak spot that obvious against the number 1 wrestler in the country, you're going to take your chances. But also, Rec Hall's in their boundaries to be unhappy with it. It's not one of those things where you shouldn't boo him because he won by injury decision, because it kind of is his fault, even though it's an unpopular thing. It's not like a slight against Ethan Miller. It's,
Right.
It's Penn State defending their guy.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, it was initially the result and like kind of upset the result, and then when he started to hype up the crowd, I think the boos were more targeted at him because I don't think that was really the right thing to do.
Yeah.
He didn't win. Like, he won, but he was losing 1-0 at the time.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not like he did something for him to earn the win. It's just because Kasak got hurt, was in concussion protocol, is why he won. And then him pumping up the crowd, I don't really think that was the right thing to do, but...
Yeah, I don't... It's not a real win
Right.
to me. Like, yes, you're the winner in the score sheet,
Yeah.
but you were losing the match.
Yeah.
So I just think he was kind of just adding on to it. Like, he could have taken it that they were booing him, but in reality, I just think they were booing the result. But to move on from that, I'm going to go with Beau Bartlett as my wrestler I want to shout out. Beau Bartlett this season, to me, has not looked like a legitimate national championship contender. I believe he's been a tier below, which is not bad at all.
Right.
At all.
Yeah.
He's looked very slow out there, and we saw that in the matches against Iowa and Michigan, and then all of a sudden, at Rec Hall against Maryland, he comes firing out and immediately takedown, and
Yeah.
was in complete control of the match, and it was like a complete 180 from the Beau Bartlett that we've seen this season, to me. If he can continue to do that, and we'll get into this a little later, but Jesse Mendez is on he's on tap for
Yeah.
the next match. That's the guy that people wanna see. We'll get into that later. But back to the fans booing aspect. Some recruits have not committed to Penn State that many wanted to. What do you think's the reasoning behind that, and what could have, made these kids not want to commit to Penn State in the future?
All right. Before I speak the rest of this, yes, NIL is a part of this, but it's not as big of a part of it as is getting put out there a lot.
Yes.
If you look at social media, the numbers getting thrown around like 5 million, guys, it's just not the case. Like I talked to both Beau and Jax over the last week. The one line that Beau said that like really sold me on the fact that that's actually not the case is when, I saw that number floating around there, which I think was referring to the 5 million. I wish it was true, but I'm not a quarterback and wrestling's not there yet, which he's just right about.
Yeah.
Because, there's probably not many Nittany Lion football players making $5 million in direct NIL money, if anyone besides Drew, maybe.
Yeah.
These two decisions were just based on the fact that the wrestling landscape's changing in the next few years. Honestly, Iowa is going to be changing around Beau because he's a generational recruit, even if not solely for talent, just the buzz that he's brings in. Because Beau Bartlett's been in the spotlight since he was 6 years old, and for him, the decision was really just as simple as Iowa was his team since that moment. Spencer Lee was kind of his hero and helped him throughout his career.
Yeah.
It's just been a lifelong recruiting process going into Iowa. They probably offered more NIL money than Penn State, but it was not by the margin that's been reported. And that's the same story for Jax, where it seemed like David Taylor just did a fantastic job recruiting Jax for us. When I talked to him on Saturday, he just buzzed over David Taylor, how he's helped him this season, led him to be the wrestler that he is. And he's so respected that at the state championships on Saturday, he cut a lot of weight to face, I forget the name, but it was another number 1 ranked wrestler. And the opposing school, Faith Christian Academy, bumped that guy up just to avoid the Jax Forrest matchup. Which, good decision, because they ended up beating Bishop McCourt for the state title. But
Oh, wow.
look, this decision was not entirely based around money. It's not getting thrown around as much as it is. It is an aspect. Bottom line, though, Iowa and Oklahoma State are just going to be playing catch-up. And in my opinion, that's better for the sport of wrestling and the growth than it is having a continued unrivaled dynasty, even if it is Penn State, which is good for us directly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I almost think some of it might have to do with the recruiting class that Kale is bringing in for this coming season. Marcus Blaze, the number one recruit, is currently the 132 guy. Or he's currently weighing in at 132, so he'll be 133, 141, 149.
Yeah.
Where you might see a Beau Bartlett or a Jax Forrest.
Russell.
Yeah. Then you have PJ Duke, the number 2 wrestler, also committed to Penn State. He's currently 157, probably will be sitting around there, maybe 165. Probably won't see him right away, I would think. But just another guy waiting in the wings as you have national championship contenders right now. I think that has a factor in recruiting classes because, yes, they are the top 2 wrestlers in the country. Yes, they are 45 minutes to an hour away. Yes, they are generational prospects in a sense. But you kind of recruit on needs. And those weight classes may not necessarily be needs at the time. It would obviously be great to have them, but I think this current recruiting class for the class of 2025 played a factor into that.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I believe that the hope maybe for Penn State is that Marcus Blaze will slide in at 141 next season and take over for Beau Bartlett because he will be out of eligibility. And PJ Duke probably won't see him just because of his weight class. And then also, they have the number 18 recruit, Asher Cunningham, who's at 165 right now. Now, obviously, if he stays there, Mitchell Bessenbrink's in that weight class.
Yeah.
But other than, there's a lot of youth in Penn State's lineup. 125 is a freshman, Luke Lillidahl. 133 when healthy, Braden Davis is a sophomore. Mitchell Messenbrink's a sophomore. There's a lot of youth, and not all of these kids would start right away. Where I believe a Beau Bartlett at Iowa will start probably right when he gets there.
Yeah.
Jax Forrest, when he gets to Oklahoma State, will start right when he gets there. And these are other programs that are giving these recruits more opportunity than Penn State really has to offer due to the wrestlers they have in these weight classes right now. And I agree with you, Evan. I think it's great for the for wrestling as a sport as a whole.
Yeah.
Penn State dominates these matches. Iowa is the number 2 team. Penn
Now
State
number 3 now.
Now
but
number
yeah.
3.
Yeah.
At the time when Penn State was wrestling them, they were number 2.
Right.
And Penn State put 30 points up against them.
Right.
And it wasn't really that close at all. These matches should close in gap now with these other schools getting these high-end recruits. And I just think for wrestling, that's what they want to see, and it will be good in the future.
I just want to add quick 2 things. One with Beau, I just think it really wasn't a fit with Penn State because if you listen to what he's been saying for the past year, it's talking about how he wants to be like the face of a program, help build something. If you come to Penn State, you're just not doing that. You're a Penn State wrestler.
Yeah.
Beau Bartlett can go to Iowa and he can be Iowa wrestling.
Right.
And
like
especially
how Spencer Lee was.
Yeah. And again, that's his childhood team. If you get the chance to be the face of your childhood team, he's going to put it against you. And one other fun note is on that Bishop McCourt team, there's also a Penn State commit named Sam Herring. And the whole team, those 3 and a few other top recruits that are in that program, went to the BJC duel against Iowa. And I got my new favorite quote of all time. We asked him about that, and he goes, "Yeah, I don't know how Beau saw that and decided to go to Iowa, but..." So it's going to be a fun local PA rivalry between Sam Herring, Jax Forrest, and Beau Bartlett spread across the Big Ten in these next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as these recruits start to come in, it should just be fun to watch in all of wrestling to see. But now to preview Penn State's next matches, which are against Ohio State on Friday and Illinois on Sunday. Ohio State, I believe we all want to preview the same match, so let's just get right into it. 141, the match that we've been waiting for. Beau Bartlett versus Jesse Mendez. What are your thoughts or predictions? Either one of you can go first. You know what? You choose.
I'll go first. My big question is, does Beau Bartlett slay the dragon?
Okay.
Whatever you want to call this.
I like that line.
Over-looming thing that Beau Bartlett can't defeat Jesse Mendez. He's
His kryptonite.
Yes, pretty much. And if he comes out and performs how he did against Maryland, where he is super aggressive, he's not waiting to take shots, winning real close. If he comes out and kind of maybe catches Mendez by surprise, he might, there's a way for him to win. He definitely has that mentality that he's been talking about. It's in there. We haven't seen it too much this year, but it's definitely in there. We saw it against Maryland. If he comes out with that mentality, doesn't wrestle timid at the beginning, he could knock off number one.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, honestly, I had no faith in this match up until Maryland because he came out looking like a bullet, like we haven't seen all season. So now it's exciting to see. It'll set the tone for the rest of the season because there's a chance you could maybe talk about the early struggles being related to him losing to Mendez in that opening weekend, and maybe shaking the confidence that we saw during the opening press conference. So it's a turning point hinge match. There's no way around it. This is the biggest match of the year so far for Bartlett, and probably will be till the tournament where he also faces Mendez.
Yeah, I agree with you. Before Maryland, I didn't have a ton of faith in this match for Bartlett, but if he comes out that aggressive and really is on the attack most of the match, it could really get him over the hump to, finally defeat this guy, and which is something that he really hasn't been able to do at all in his collegiate career.
Right, yeah.
Do you think there's a legit chance of that happening? Like, what would be your predictions of the winner of this match?
You want to go first? I need to think about it a little bit longer.
See, I think I'm in the same spot as Andrew, where it's it's genuinely a toss-up in my opinion. I do lean towards I would have more trust in Beau defeating Mendez in one of the tournaments than just the duel, just based on the Penn State mindset. Like everything they do is looking towards those tournaments.
Yeah.
So I don't think in his mind it would be catastrophic either way. So I'll say I'm gonna predict Mendez.
It really comes down to this is what I was debating on in my head. What Beau Bartlett do we see?
Yeah.
And I just talked about it with the one we saw against Maryland. If he shows up like that, I think he wins.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, then Mendez has it. I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to say Bartlett was aggressive against Maryland to show that this is the Beau Bartlett that is ready to take down Jesse Mendez.
I'm also going to go with Beau Bartlett on this one. If he's wrestling like that against Maryland, it'll be close no matter who wins, but if he's on the attack the entire match, then he could finally get over the hump and even be maybe number one at 141. We'll move on to Illinois unless you guys have anyone else you want to talk about.
One more match at Ohio State that looks pretty interesting. 149, Shane Van Ness going up against Dylan D'Amelio. He's number 8. He's a 14-2 wrestler, and he's a 4-time national championship qualifier. So even though there's really not much in that lineup that we're looking scared of, that's a match to look out for, and Shane Van Ness will be happy if he can defeat Dylan D'Amelio.
Yeah. All right, we'll go on to Illinois now. Any matches that stick out to you right now or that fans could be excited to watch?
It's up in the air because of Braden Davis, but
Yeah.
133 is their best wrestler, I'd say, in Lucas Bird. So I'm still going to go with that in the mindset that Davis does wrestle because you want to get him back. You would think you want to get him back and wrestle at some point before the Big Ten championships because he's had so much time off, and facing a big time wrestler like Bird, it's a chance to see where Braden Davis is at this point. And like we saw at the beginning of the season, Davis had that injury. We were questioning if he was going to wrestle. Then he faced Crookham, competed well with him. I think this could be the same case where it's close. I think Bird would have the advantage because of the experience wrestling this year.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go with Kirkvliet up against Luke Laufman. He's a senior, 12-3, ranked number 10 at heavyweight, and definitely, could maybe even upset Kirkvliet. I don't see that happening, but I think it should be a really close match either way throughout the entirety of the 3 periods. Evan, you got one?
Yeah, I'm going to jump up to 149, where, again, it's Shane Van Ness. He's going up against Cannon Webster, who's a redshirt freshman for the Illini. And he's just been really consistently good since his freshman season, or his redshirt freshman, I believe that would have been. He went 16-1, and he's been ranked around that top 10. Doesn't have many massive victories, but he's beaten every opponent that he and Shane Van Ness have in common. And this is his opportunity to jump into the next tier like Josh Barr had for the Nittany Lions these last couple of weeks. So he's going to be motivated in front of his home floor. If there's going to be an upset watch, that would probably be the one.
That'll do it for this episode of The Matt Return. I'm AJ Piazza.
I'm Andrew Deal.
I'm Evan Smith.
Make sure to subscribe to the Wrestling Newsletter.